Thank you. I just want to welcome everyone here tonight, and I wanted to let you know that Reed Vincent was not able to attend tonight because he was double booked this evening for another function, but he wanted to let you know that he is very interested in learning about this project along with you, and that he wants to encourage you, the public, to submit your comments. Your comments will form a part of the decision making as to ultimately what's going to happen with this structure. So it's very important to hear from you. And I just wanted to let you know that he was sorry he wasn't able to come. So please participate and feel free to ask any questions once we are finished with the formal session. And you can take a look at the exhibits, although it might be kind of hard to do that with the room this full. So maybe if we could sort of clear the room for a little bit and kind of take turns doing that after the presentation, that would be good. So thank you. And this is Jeff Graham. He is our project engineer. So
okay.
Take over.
Thanks very much, Sharon. Yes, my name is Jeff Graham. I'm with GSS Engineering out of Owen Sound. I'm also here with Elizabeth Thompson. She's our financial analyst. So she may participate as well tonight a little bit. So I'm going to give a sort of a pre-prepared presentation. It will be a little dry because it really focuses on the nuts and bolts of the Class CA process. As explained, we have not done a lot of evaluation of the details yet. So we've got a little bit of background information on the dam here, but we have not done a lot of evaluation as yet of the alternatives. So I'll start in here, and there will be a chance for you to answer questions after I'm done. Again, we thank you for coming tonight. And the purpose of our meeting tonight really is to present the Class CA process and also to get initial comment from you folks. And we will be holding a second public information meeting sometime later this fall, and there'll be lots of public notice when that's going to occur. So the Class CA process. The Class CA process, the Class Environmental Assessment process, is an approved public consultation process under Ontario's Environmental Assessment Act. The Class CA is mandatory for a large number of major infrastructure projects undertaken by municipalities. And it's a process that documents the decision-making process where a municipality eventually selects their preferred alternative for an infrastructure project. And the EA process certainly invites comments from yourselves, but also agencies and First Nations. And those comments coming from all those different parties are eventually used as part of the decision-making process. So in the EA, we evaluate alternatives, and we consider quite a wide range of factors. And they cover impacts or benefits to the natural environment, impacts or benefits to the social environment, also the economic environment. And we also consider the cultural environment as well as technical considerations when we evaluate the alternatives. So there's quite a broad suite of things we look at when we look at the pros and cons of each alternative. And we will really get into that evaluation phase over the next 2 months and do that largely before the next public meeting.
Pardon me, sir, do you have a speaker?
I don't. My hope was this is,
down the hall.
well, I can't, I know.
Okay,
Well, so what we'll probably do is we're going to repeat all this at 8 o'clock or so and give those folks a chance to maybe come in. So we'll have to indulge you to maybe, if you had your first hour in your chair, maybe let the next round of folks in for the next one. Again, back to the dry nuts and bolts of the Class CA process. There's 3 categories or schedules within the Class CA projects, from really minor projects to major projects. They're called Schedule A, B, or C. A being the minor ones that really don't need a full EA process or any EA process at all, up to big, expensive projects that municipalities undertake from time to time, which are Schedule C. So we go to our EA book produced by the Municipal Engineers Association of Ontario. We look at the schedules, and the direction this book would give us that it'd be best to consider this a Schedule B project under the schedules that are in there. And the Schedule B just means that there's at least one public meeting, and there's what they call a project follow report prepared at the end of the process. And that report goes out for 30 days of comments. And that's sort of the official comment period comes in those final 30 days. So in the notice of commencement, probably a lot of you folks have seen that we've listed 5 preliminary alternatives. I just want to read them out. Alternative 1, rebuild the dam and bridge structure and restore dam head pond to its former level. And by that we mean a brand new dam. Whether that's a brand new dam and bridge, that's part of this whole evaluation. But that's the real expensive one. That's a brand new facility, a brand new structure. Alternative 2, rehabilitate the existing dam and bridge and maintain water levels where they are. Alternative 3, rehabilitate what you have, but restore the dam such that the water levels can be returned to their historic levels. Alternative 4, decommission or actually remove the dam entirely. And alternative 5 is you do nothing. You leave the dam as it is.
I think we know the answer to that already. We're doing that.
So getting a little bit of feedback here, but again, we're open to suggestions on those alternatives. There may be more.
I think you can take away 1 or 2 right away. Number 1 and number 2.
Okay.
We don't want to rebuild the dam. We don't want to
There was another one
rehabilitate the
forward.
existing dam.
That involved generating some energy.
Yes,
It's been ignored. We don't know, it's sending a message that.
we've had some internal discussion on that. That will be up for consideration as an alternative, but perhaps it's a sub-alternative. It's a complex situation. Would a power generator want a brand new dam where he has his turbine and intakes and all that designed into the dam? There is some evidence that some power generators might be willing to try and retrofit what you have, but fix it first. So we weren't sure how to incorporate that. There might even be another one where somebody appears and says, we'll buy the dam off you for $1 and make all the power. And that brings in a whole bunch of other complex things about, is the municipality, can they just divest themselves of an infrastructure asset like this? We're not sure. But we're conscious of the need somehow to consider the hydro option. I just want to summarize. Again, this is a short presentation, and our intent was actually to spend time one-on-one with our boards and things. And I'm just going to review what is on display once I'm done here. As mentioned earlier, and described in the notice of study commencement, this first public information center is to receive initial feedback from you folks and to provide a general history of the dam. We will advise of the time and date and the place of the next public meeting. We may need a larger venue. And that really encourages my presentation formally tonight. Make sure you've signed in when you've come in. There are comment sheets out there. You can fill up by hand or you can email comments in. There are various takeaway packages out there that include our problem and opportunity statement and a separate one that actually consists of those 3 boards over here on this wall. That's all available for takeaway. And maybe before I entertain questions and answers, I'll just review a couple things what we've got here because it's going to be difficult. This rather complex chart is the EA process. Again, it's a pretty dry stuff. If anybody really wants to get into what that EA process is all about, we can chat about that. There are 3 boards out front that were from pictures taken earlier this summer that shows various elements of the dam and bridge as it exists now. Over on the side here, we have the notice of study commencement, which you may have seen on the website. We've got a little bit of preliminary historical information, which we consider sort of public domain, probably generally known information about the dam. That's one board. And a little bit of a discussion on finances, asset management plan, some of the new things that municipalities are dealing with in terms of maintaining and funding their infrastructure. And over here, we've got 2 boards, just aerial photos with labels. You folks probably know the geography very, very well, of course. But if there's any question about where things are and what we're talking about, there's some displays over here for that. And we've also done a board way back in here, which just shows what lands in and around the dam are owned by the municipality versus privately owned lands. So that's it. So we'd be prepared to entertain questions. Yes, ma'am.
I was curious as to whether any of these electrical companies were consulted by either you or the municipality?
Not as yet, not by us.
Seeing as it's a valuable possibility, is how these other 5 were tended to, I would think it'd be rather an important area to look into.
It's a good comment.
So how do you actually measure the social and cultural factors as part of the DA process?
It's a difficult, I'm not going to argue or dodge that. It's difficult. In fact, how you rate the alternatives is largely subjective, especially with factors like that. We will do our best. We'll probably come up with some sort of scoring matrix. You put 10 engineers together or 10 environmental scientists together and ask them to do the same thing, you'll probably come up with slightly different methods.
Just pick 3.
What's that?
Just pick 3.
Okay. But we're going to do our best, and we're going to show you how we've done that.
It's really simple.
Are you going to show us after you've done it or before you do it? Because I think there's an ability for us to participate in that process.
Normally, we don't show you how we're going to do it in advance. But at the next public open house, we're going to show you how we've done it. And
So why would this be a behind the scenes process?
well, perhaps it doesn't have to be. Perhaps
Why
we
not?
can do the
Transparent.
evaluation and the evaluation scoring system, do it in advance and try and put that out in the public forum before the next public meeting as a draft. I don't see why that would be a problem.
Can we know a little bit about your background? How many assessments on how many dams you've done and how many were decommissioned and how many were repaired?
I've done a few removals.
Mhm.
I've done one EA for the Great Solvable Conservation Authority for the Terra Dam. But we've done a lot of Class EAs for other municipal infrastructure such as sewage plants and water plants. But there hasn't been a lot of EAs done for dams in this part of Ontario.
So you've done mostly removals.
I've done a couple removals.
How many repairs have you done?
0. There's been, I mean, to be honest with you, the only investment that I know of in dams probably historically, the Hanover Dam had some fairly major repairs done to it a number of years ago. But there's been a few private owners that have attempted to repair the dams for hydro production. But there's not a lot of statistics on that I'm aware of in terms of investments by municipalities in dams that they own. And this is not a scientific observation, but my observation generally is most municipalities, unfortunately, have just let their dams, deteriorate. Because there is no legislation in Canada or Ontario to force anybody to do something with their dam if it's long in the tooth and deteriorate. It can be left to sit. We can discuss this at quite a bit of length under the provincial asset management plan. Is there really anything forcing municipality to do something with really old, decrepit infrastructure? Doesn't appear to be.
But if you don't do anything, just let it go, as you say, eventually, then you get into the removal of the dam. As it starts to fall down, dangerous, etc. So we're going to be faced then with a significant cost.
Perhaps.
So why not do it now?
You mean tear it down?
No, I mean fix it so you avoid that cost. I know fixing it will be.
I just wanted to make it clear.
I'm just suggesting that to rip it out is going to cost, am I guessing, but something like 400,000?
I'm not going to venture a guess. We'll do our best estimates on all those alternatives over the next 2 months.
Where does the Conservation Authority come into this?
Conservation Authority at this point is one of the agencies on our notification list.
Right.
I would not be surprised to get some sort of formal feedback from them. They may be in attendance tonight, but I don't know.
Sky is a mark.
I noticed in your advertisement for this meeting, in the first 3 alternatives, you mentioned a bridge. However, when I reviewed the terms of reference for the RFP, I didn't see anything in there about including a bridge.
Right, you're
So
right.
how come it's being included now?
Well,
Or is it being included?
I think it has to be personally. But we're looking for feedback on that. I don't think the two can be separated entirely.
Why?
Well,
Why?
We've done without the bridge for 15 years.
yeah.
We don't need a new bridge.
Yeah.
You maybe came into town from the north. We have a very good bridge a
I
few
agree.
hundred
I
meters
agree
up
with
the
you.
street.
Yeah. We're
So
gonna,
we don't want the cost of this project escalated because you think a bridge needs to be built. The intention of this was to repair damage. And we have the drawings and the cost estimate to repair the dam. So your alternative 3 investigation should be pretty darn easy.
Yeah.
You just take Mr. Ross's information and regurgitate it, right? You're aware of that?
I'm aware of it, but we have not looked at it in any great detail as yet.
But as long as you're aware of it,
I'm aware of it.
both design and the cost estimate.
I'm aware of those.
Look at them.
You know, we're in the alternative 5, have been for quite some time, doing nothing and just leaving the dam.
Mhm.
I've listened to this with councils for over 40 years, and every one of them has just postponed it, put it back on the back burner, even to at the point where Westcast at one point wanted to assist in the cost, and it got shoved to the bottom again. So I'm really tired of 40 years of listening to doing nothing. We wouldn't be in the state we're in now if people had fixed it as it needed fixed. But if you just leave something for 40 years and do nothing with it, what the hell you got? You got nothing.
Good comment?
That's what they were gonna do down below down. Leave it as it is
Yeah.
and fix it later. Well, they just never came. What happened to it?
Yep.
I can figure out here that there's too many chiefs and talk about aliens. No.
You can say that again.
Over a third of this town signed a petition to have that dam cosmetically refurbished. BM Ross says that dam is surprisingly sturdy and will be there for at least 50 years unless somebody knocks it down. All we want is when you drive across the Hannah Bridge, we don't want an eyesore there, and we want that water put back to the original level. And why isn't the town council telling people that Don Carter left an account with over 200,000 in it, and it's still sitting there earmarked for refurbishing that dam?
How long ago did you do that?
It would cost much more to cosmetically regrout that dam and put the boards back in and regrout the sluice. And it wouldn't cost much more than $250,000. Why isn't this council acting?
Amen.
That's not a question I'm gonna answer.
And I'll do you a favor and I'll stop it.
Sir, I got a question for you. In, looks like page 3 of your packet. Near the bottom where it says preliminary Howson Dam financial status, the last bullet point says the balance of the Howson Dam Reserve Fund is projected to be approximately $110,000 in early 2017.
Where's the other 90?
I knew the mayor personally who left that fund. Why is there only a balance, actually 2 parts, why is there only a balance of $110,000? Second, there was a secondary account that was left set for infrastructure. And I can tell you it was close to 500, if not 600,000. And it was set aside for infrastructure prior to the complex being built. So
Okay. So I don't know anything about the
I know you don't know
secondary
anything about
account.
it. I'd just like to make a point that there were
Yeah.
2 accounts set up.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that there were 2 accounts set up. Like I said, I knew the mayor personally. I've seen the plans. I saw where a complex was supposed to be up by the new school. And so now that my rant's over, just my question to whoever's here, why is there only gonna be a balance of 110,000? Where did the rest of it go?
Adam at the front. This whole thing's a sham put on by her. Sham.
Yes, you're right.
You're darn right.
Got a question over there.
You mentioned your firm has done other assessments in the area. Is there any close by that we would know of and be able to see?
Well, when I first started my career, I did a $6 million sewage plant in Mitchell. Sort of
I
down
mean,
the
as a
road.
dam project,
No, not as a dam project.
none in the area?
No, I don't think there's been very many done, to be honest with you. You know, it's one of those things where it's been said before, it's easy just to let go.
Well, I know there's a dam not too far from here that got let go, or actually got decommissioned, and now that wetland, which when I grew up, I fished there. The fish aren't there anymore. There's not even enough water there for frogs. So is that what's gonna happen here?
That's what we'd like to have.
Well,
They wanna do.
well, what we've been asked to do, objective evaluation on the alternatives.
But I don't know, are you down here is in the summertime to see all the kids along the riverbank fishing and the parents taking their kids out?
I have not. No, I have not.
Water, you know, it's nice to see. I don't, you know, you can drive down through Mildly and watch the frogs blow dirt around. That's what it is. That's not what I want to happen here.
Well, and I go back to the other question, how from an office in one sound, you evaluate the social and cultural factors?
Yeah.
You list them here as important criteria, but to be honest, Dave, it sounds like you don't know how to evaluate it, or you don't really plan to put much
No.
effort into it.
We will do our very best to do that.
But how do you do that? What's the process?
Well, I think a lot of things on social and cultural, I mean, let's say you're doing a sewage plant, it might be a little easier. If you've got 3 alternatives for a new sewage plant, and one is beside a very, you know, a school, so for instance, you know, you could say there's gonna be social impacts to those students from potential odor and visuals, perhaps noise. But it's really up to the municipality and their consultant to do the best job they can to fairly wade through there and come up with an assessment of those impacts for better or worse.
Right, so are you trying to gauge that or gather data on the usage of the area?
If you had data on the usage, we'd be very interested in seeing it.
Well, there was a booklet there that was taken down.
Just a history of it.
There was a which?
There was a booklet there that was taken down in an attempt to collect data.
Okay.
So shouldn't that be part, so if you need to evaluate, I manage quite a few contracts actually, so if it's in your scope to evaluate this criteria, isn't it also in your scope to gather the data so you can do your job properly?
We are going to gather as much data as we can. If you've got sources of data that we can get, we'd like to hear about them.
I think there's a room full of data right here.
That's right. And your comment sheets are part of the data. You know, I think if you're interested in the cultural and social side of this, your comment sheets should reflect what are important social and cultural considerations.
Well, the river really is winning because it goes all the way around it.
Mhm.
And if it becomes nothing but a mud hole that goes around it, it's not going to be very popular, is it? We have enough trouble getting anybody moving to this town, let alone letting the river go to nothing.
Exactly.
I think we're heading the wrong way. We're questioning you about questions that you probably can't answer. And we should have our council here to help
Yes.
us
Yeah,
to
that'd
give
be
us
great.
answers. How many people here are on the Wingham Council? Two. Whoopee! Don't get excited, guys.
Just to speak to that, we did have some council members that are planning on coming for 7 o'clock just to take in what was planned for the presentation time. We do have a few conflicts and schedules as well. One of the things we're trying to get through this fall is certainly on our side anyways, the reason why the timing of this meeting today was to make sure that we get out here to the public so that we do have an opportunity to collect your comments. And as Jeff said, it is part of this project, and certainly when you're talking about social and cultural aspects, this is what we're trying to collect, that information. It all becomes part of the project record and part of how we I guess, more or less verify the decision-making process. We certainly, this is an important piece to council, but again, being the fall and being some other activities on tonight as well, there were a few schedule conflicts. But as we are here today, we certainly have representatives from council here who can take the message. And we have councilors that will be coming as well for, say, for the 7 o'clock time too, so.
Well, I didn't get a choice. I had to be here at 6. Why weren't they?
Regarding strictly alternative 3 and strictly the dam, could you tell us if an EA was required for that particular alternative?
You gotta check your schedule.
I have.
Okay.
I don't usually ask a question unless I know
Depends what alternative it is. The actually dam modifications are actually described in all 3 schedules of A, B, and C. As I pointed out, the whole new dam is a Schedule C. Removal of a dam is a B. Renovation of a dam, if you're changing its capacity, as I think you're pointing out, is also a B.
No, I'm not talking about changing capacity.
I know, but if you're not changing capacity, which you're alluding to, it is theoretically an A. So which one do you pick? If you really want to do an evaluation of all the alternatives. Appropriate, this council and staff selected B, which is in the middle.
My point is, we didn't have to do this EA if we'd have proceeded with alternative 3. Do you agree?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, right.
It all depends on what your definition of good governance is. Good planning.
I think the point is, the council decided to keep the dam, we wouldn't be here today, we were preparing it.
Yes.
And the reserve fund would be at $200,000 instead of paying you guys $90,000 to do this study. That's where the other $90,000 is, Joe.
So when would they spend that $90,000 on consultant fees when they were saved for the repairs?
I don't know.
That's why all these people are here, because they're terrified of your past history. Not afraid, terrified of your past history, and quite likely how your choice will be as to what will happen to our dam. That's why we're here. We are terrified.
This is a democracy. We have a right to speak.
That's right. That's
Absolutely.
right. And the number of people here should be quite evident as to what you feel the public feeling is, and also the names on the list. There's a good percentage of this town, and should give the council, being as they are representative as of the desires of this town, should know quite well as to what the process should be and what the possible and the probable ending should be.
Yes.
This won't end up like London's dam, will it? But yeah, they've been going on for 4 or 5 years and get some money down the drain.
Yeah, now it don't even work. Spend all that money to put in a new dam and.
I don't know the details on the London Dam other than what I read in the paper.
Would a weir dam be an option?
Would a weir dam be an option?
Yeah, just put it in and whatever goes over, and you're controlling the water level here. You can, it's basically what's going on right now, but it'd be a lot less cost effective or expensive, I mean. Correct?
Yeah, not sure that's really any different than what you have now.
Not only that, they could lay 3 of the town men out because they wouldn't need them to open and close the board. Water go over and be no problem.
If that's what you're meaning,
It's
is
there to control the flow of the water and
Yeah,
just the
yeah.
river,
basically just keep the boards in all year round and, yeah.
reconstruct a weir dam.
Yeah. Yes, sir?
You're talking about feedback.
Yes.
What is the type of feedback that you expect from these people?
Well, the conventional feedback is you fill out a comment sheet or submit an email. Something in writing is really the best feedback.
I realize that,
Yeah.
but what form is that, not form is that to take, but what kind of information do you need?
Well,
I mean, I could write and say, I liked it the way it was. You know, what kind of feedback is that?
Well, the comments I've seen over my experience with the EAs is everything from soup to nuts, long letters versus one-line statements. I personally think something a little more than a one-line statement is helpful. Understand the rationale behind the position to some degree. So I would encourage you to give us a little bit at least. I guess that's, but really it's public input. So I'm not here to prescribe exactly what you say, obviously, or how you say it.
But there's keywords that you will assess to help you sway one way or the other.
No, there's no keywords. No, it's
Subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where will this feedback go? To whom will this feedback?
He can go either to myself or to Jeff Mollenhouse,
Who is?
your Director of Public Works.
So it should go, in my mind, to the whole council.
You can if you
And-
like,
and to
yes.
you.
Yeah.
I really think everyone should get the feedback.
Jeff, would that not form part of the end report?
It
Like
does,
Any of this
yeah.
feedback actually goes into the EA report, so
Yeah.
it's published as part of that.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
All of the feedback?
How much credit is there
Typically.
given to the people that signed the petition and the number of people that are here tonight? Does this have any effect on what the decision might be, or is it just that we happen to attend this? Our feelings as to why we're here has no effect, or is this going to have an effect, or have we come just to hear you talk about nothing?
I don't think
have the same question. Is this like a wind turbine public meeting or?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm honestly not going to answer that because I don't want to prejudge anything. But all I can say is written comments are important.
But a lot of people are not comfortable writing written comments on a subject that they're not really familiar with. So maybe what we need to do is get 10 or 20 or 30 people who are comfortable with 8 or 10 people who can sit down and I'll write down what you say and type it up and we'll mail it all up. Because a lot of people will leave here and go home and say, I just can't face it. At least people like me would. Is that right? Anybody?
No. No. Saying that you won't sit down and write what's
Yes,
on your mind.
I would, but a lot of people will not. And I just thought.
They should, or they shouldn't be here.
But they can speak well. They're just not good at putting it on paper.
Well,
It's
it's
pretty easy to put
tonight
it on
in further meeting.
Oh,
They
yeah.
want to speak, they want to write, they can go home.
Excuse me. There's a gentleman back here.
Okay, we'll go to this question.
I have one comment. It's mainly a comment, but as taxpayers, we have one of the highest mill rates in New England, like almost anywhere. And also, with that, the money gets set aside to a whole bunch of different things. Because basically what it boils down to reviews, it's all about money, how much will it cost, how much this, how much that, and then there's people seeing the recreational side of the dam. So I'd like to know, do we have any other money set aside for any other like a recreational items like all through the town, our whole budget? How much money can there be allotted to the dam and how will this affect our taxes? Like that basically, because everybody wants the dam that's here. So the way I look at it, we need to find a way to raise the money to fix the dam. And if you want to tear it out, then that goes against what everybody here is for. So I'd like to know, how can town council, and where's the money gonna come from to fix this thing? How are we gonna do that? Because
We are looking into the financial impact of all of these various alternatives. So we're hoping within this analysis that we will actually come up with some numbers that will be solid evaluations, putting the alternatives into dollar values and the impact of that council can consider each option. Whether there be grants available out there or whether they have reserve funds put away, that would be kind of a budgetary
BM Ross did that
Impact.
15 years ago.
Pardon me?
BM Ross did that 15 years ago.
Can't we find it then?
Will you be looking for grants for it?
Smell was not the right response.
Federal provincial funding as part of your financial analysis?
It's a complex world out there for grants. And you're a retired engineer who's probably heard of one third, grant fundings. And every municipality has the challenge to, when they apply for these grants, typically, you've got to decide which is your highest priority. So.
My question was, will you folks, when you do your financial analysis, will you point out to our municipality that there's potential grants available here, 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 or here?
At this point, that's not part of our terms of reference. We could consider that. But it is complicated. It is complicated. No, we're not money finders, okay? We're not money finders.
It's not that complicated. Only people make things complicated.
Straight answers at all.
Trying to do my best.
I would think that'd be a priority. That would be a priority. Find out where we're getting money from.
I just had a brainwave. Since the dam is named after Howson, who had the flour mill there in the 40s, perhaps GoFundMe down in Blythe. Would they like to give a contribution to save your name?
Already been discussed.
Yeah.
I really don't understand, I'm looking at it, I really don't understand why alternative one is even in the assessment. I don't think anybody thinks the bridge is necessary infrastructure there in town. There's nobody here for Save the Bridge, we're all here for Save the Dam. So why is that even on here as an assessment?
So, I mean, I'm just saying, it's possible. Somebody might conclude it's really not, it's too far gone. I mean, so I'm just saying that.
That better not
Well,
be
I
the
understand you
answer.
need to replace it, but I said nobody here wants a bridge.
Okay.
We want a dam, so
Okay.
why is it here as an alternative to?
Well, I kind of push for that part because, in all the discussion I've seen so far, there's not much discussion about the bridge.
No.
And it's, if you say scrap the bridge, I mean, that's the kind of comment we want to hear.
Well, everybody put scrap the bridge on
Yeah.
the first line of your
But
letter.
right now, they're joined at the hip, those two structures.
But did you come up with your own terms of reference, or was it directed by council? I've never issued a contract where the vendor came up with their own terms of reference.
Design build. But,
I still write the text back, sir.
okay, in terms of the 5 alternatives, I did discuss them, we discussed them with Jeff. As a group, we came up with these 5 preliminary alternatives.
You're not answering his question, though.
No, I didn't do.
Who did?
Well, the municipality did the terms of reference on here's what we want an engineer to do.
You mean Sharon?
So then,
but
directed to the municipality, why would the municipality want to see a new bridge there? Like, what's the reason in that? What's the point?
I don't think they're saying they want to see a new bridge.
Well, why are they paying you consultant fees for a new bridge?
We're not being paid to design a new bridge.
Consultant to consider the bridge.
We're considering alternatives right now.
Yeah.
Would you consider a walking bridge?
Can we hear their answer on that question?
Yeah.
I can certainly speak to that, and I will.
Sure, okay.
So when we were putting the terms of reference together, certainly when doing the dam structure, they are, as Jeff said, together. And so when you're evaluating one or the other, the opinion was at the time of the terms of reference, when I put them together, that's what I pulled them together as sort of one in the process. And really, when you look at the two, certainly they are connected, they are together, and so the evaluation does take into consideration.
But does this mean you're actually going to restore the bridge to vehicle traffic? Like, what loading is it going to hover? Is it just going to be for pedestrians?
We are not committed to any of these 5 alternatives right now. In
So,
fact,
but you have to put an economic justification against these alternatives. So you have to know
That's right.
whether that's just going to be a pedestrian dam or a vehicle dam. It's going to affect the cost dramatically.
Yeah.
So what's your guidance? What's it saying in terms of reference? Is this restoring it to vehicle traffic or just remaining in pedestrian?
the terms of reference are general, and now we're going more specific.
Okay.
So if there's a lots of comments that say, don't worry about the bridge, we'll probably introduce some sub-alternatives, which would be
Probably.
dam only, no bridge.
So when would this happen?
Well, over the next 2 months.
Or the next 2 months?
Yeah.
So we all have to get to work and cry and whine about what it is we're not getting that we should get.
Well, what we're asking for
And then
is.
you will read it all and determine who likes what the best. And then come up with a decision for us, or do we get to make the decision in the long run? We being.
The process
kind of
is
wing.
that we evaluate the
Nobody else
alternatives.
from anybody else, just to try to wing it.
Well, the EA process actually is pretty broad in scope. If there's people outside of Wingham could have their own opinion on this.
Yeah, but we don't want anybody's opinion if
No,
they're not from Wingham.
Okay, I understand that.
Isn't that right?
Yeah. But our job is to come up, to fairly evaluate the alternatives, come up with a new alternative, and come forward at some point with a recommendation of the preferred alternative. And that goes out for comment again.
So these comments that we're gonna go to the effort of writing, are they actually all gonna be read? Or is that just to appease our silence
We will read them.
and consider them?
Yes.
Is it possible to eliminate the decommissioning of the dam? Because nobody in the town wants to decommission it?
Sunbury Township is on the other side.
I wouldn't be in favor of eliminating it at this point.
I know this, but it's
I am in favor
That's
of,
what your experience is.
I'm interested, I'd be in favor of perhaps expanding the alternatives or coming up with sub-alternatives.
What alternatives are you talking about?
Well, there's been concerns expressed tonight that why we focused on the bridge. So maybe alternative 1A is build a new dam, not build a new dam and bridge.
Who do we have to talk to or convince that that's what the people of the town want?
Yeah, there's nothing else but.
Well, what we need is your comment sheets, obviously.
Right, but if we put 200 comment pages out there that all say the same thing, then at the next meeting, that isn't actually an alternative that's been considered. Right? I mean, if you say that if the comment sheets will actually put that alternative on the table, I think we all gonna expect that alternative is gonna be on the table. I think everybody here, without filling out a comment sheet, is telling you that alternative should be on the table.
Yes.
Mr. Graham, with all due respect, earlier in this meeting, I pointed out to you that the terms of reference that you quoted on did not mention the bridge
Yes,
at all.
yes.
So it's a red herring that somebody's situation.
No, I would
The
suggest
word
that-
bridge was in your terms of reference twice, Mr. Moore. Twice. So it wasn't one of the alternatives to be considered. So if whoever dragged that red herring in, I think you could drag it out again right now.
Here, here.
Who, put the bridge in? You? Mr. Mullenhouse?
Yes, so when I put the terms of reference together, I did, as you said, I did mention the bridge. And as we get through the project, and certainly in the terms of reference, we have the options outlined. It's a preliminary meeting to take your feedback. And certainly as part of your feedback today and hearing about the bridge, I would suggest that that is something that we would consider for the next meeting, that it will be an alternative that we evaluate, not repairing the bridge. Certainly that's the feedback we're trying to get here tonight. And I think that's part of the message too, is that, a lot of, information is coming forward as we kind of go through the project. We're trying to collect that information and certainly make that part of the project record. Part of your feedback is part of that project record that helps inform the decision-making process. So to say that, we're just gonna leave it out, that's not necessarily a true statement. This is gonna go through a process where you are very much involved and you have this opportunity like tonight to comment to help guide the process.
How come this wasn't brought forth before? Have a meeting before all this happened? You guys went ahead and done all the clear stuff, and there was nothing about that the public got into at all. It was all done by, I don't know who.
Well, my only comment, just because I know you want to get other people in here, is that it seems to me that how familiar are you with Bingham and the dam? I know you're fairly new employee of the township, I guess. What made you want to bring that in, and what background have you had? Did you just like parachute into this place?
Yeah, maybe, yes, I did parachute into this place.
Well, there's so many people who have been here for various periods of time, some many, many years, who have seen that the bridge issue, like people aren't picketing to save our bridge or anything. So it seems odd to me that you would be able to come in and give an opinion as to the fact that we need a bridge.
Now, I'm not going to say that we need a bridge. That's not really I think what's, I guess, what we discussed in the terms of reference, or what really is the option. I think it's out there as part of the conversation. And certainly we're hearing good feedback from you today about wanting to separate the two. Really, we do hear, or we do see that they are obviously connected elements. So that's really the intent, I think, when we had initially kicked off the project, we had this discussion about how they do come together. Maybe they are part of the story together. And if it's not, if the decommissioning of the dam or the rebuilding or rehabilitation of the dam is separate from the bridge, then certainly that is an alternative that I think we would be open to, looking at as part of this process.
It'd certainly be less expensive project.
If I may, just for a minute, Andy, perhaps you had some conversation with Andy Ross about this from BM Ross, but I know Andy Ross had told me that consider the two independently because the bridge impacts the load bearing on that structure. So if the bridge continues to deteriorate, at some point it will have to be removed, and that will affect the stability. So when a stability analysis is done on that structure to determine whether you could raise the water levels, you have to consider the bridge in conjunction with that. If we don't, and the bridge continues to deteriorate ahead with the rehabilitation, you may have wasted that money on rehabilitation at some point if you have to remove the bridge and it impacts now the stability of the structure. So Andy Roth was of the opinion that the two had to be considered together, not for replacement of the bridge, but what happens when that bridge structure continues to deteriorate and it eventually has to be removed. And that's just foresight in making sure that any money that is spent on that structure is spent wisely.
So is that understood in the study then, that the bridge is only there in order to support the structure of the dam, not function as a bridge? Because if that was actually understood, why would we be building a new bridge if we tear down the existing structure? It doesn't seem to make sense to me.
And that bridge structurally, I'm pretty sure it's steel in there with the concrete. He used to drive 100,000 pounds over that bridge all the time. So I can tell you right now, structurally, that it should be able to hold the water. All the concrete and facings going away, but you can do your study. But I drove a truck over there with a lot of weight on it countless amount of times. And I can tell you right now, that bridge, we quit driving on it because it was getting old or whatever, but if it can hold that kind of weight and even for the cement that's on that steel structure, I'm almost guaranteed it'll be fine.
Who was it said that it was good for 50 years?
That costs any money?
Andy has made a comment here that.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've got quite a few people out in the hall who haven't had a chance to express their concerns, so I think we should rotate here. Those of us in here should move out, the others.
Before we rotate, I'd like to know when the next meeting is going to happen and how you're going to let people know that you're inviting comments and that you're going to hold a meeting. When is that going to take place?
Yeah, maybe before we disperse, before people kind of leave, the question was about the next meeting. So just before you go, so the next meeting will take place this year. We're planning for later in the fall, so we're probably talking the November timeframe.
In a bigger room?
Of course, in a bigger room.
The reason I asked, I phoned the town hall about 2 weeks ago and asked about this meeting, and I was told at switchboard that they didn't know anything about it.
Okay. So we, obviously, in terms of the meeting timing, we did schedule the meeting about 2 weeks ago. And like I mentioned, you know, we're trying to collect some preliminary information and feedback right now and to try to outline the process.
Schedule it far enough in advance so that council can clear their calendars and be here.
Make sure the council.
And get on the notice.
How do the other people in town? Yeah, they can get on the list. But I think the town has a responsibility to get it. When I went to look for I had to go through and look here and there, and I finally found it after about 30 minutes on the calendar, way down the bottom with the fashion show and everything else. Only place it was. And when I phoned in here, the young lady on the switchboard didn't do anything about it, but she had somebody who did. But how are others who aren't here tonight?
But I want to ask you, yes, you're with the engineer, yes. Maybe can answer this question. We're signed by September. Well, this was just to get on for this major process, but if you'd like to be given any comments or wish to have so on top, yeah, because that's today, right? So if you're going to get your comments in prior to the meeting, we'll see this notice when I will be but so if you want to get your still comments, we'll take comments, and then after it's in the council. So you'll still have but this you get your comments and they are everyone that gives comments. Yeah, you can send it to like a new email. Yeah. Send it to Jeff directly. Or you can send it to Jeff. Yeah, to Jeff. Yeah. Or you can mail it to my writer works. Yeah, for you. Yes, doing that. Are you okay? Yeah. Part of your balance. It's warm in here, doesn't it? So many people are this sugar. Yeah, it's fine. Right. It's nice to have. Usually just those last ones. That's right. She talked to Jeff.
Right, when you're done, I'd like to ask this girl a question. I'd like to bring it, Excuse me? Excuse me? So we just had one presentation at 6 o'clock, obviously a great turnout tonight. We do have some more council here now that we have some scheduled conflict over with. So certainly, again, we're going to give the presentation and we'll open up the floor again for some questions. For anyone that didn't sit through that first part, we do have obviously information available online, and so this this session will be available online on our website. You can access it and check it out. If not, we can certainly have more information here for you that you can take home and make comment. Just want to reiterate from earlier too that tonight really we're hoping to focus on the EA process and what path it takes. There will be a second meeting, and that meeting will be one where we do evaluate the alternatives, and that's information certainly that you will see as the public. Some of the comments earlier were just about the social and cultural aspects and how that sort of integrates into that second meeting. And Jeff, our consultant, Jeff Graham from GSS, he can kind of outline that a bit more for you through this point here today. So feel free to certainly sit in and ask questions at the end of it. I think some of you might have been kind of here for that earlier part too. So just again, if you have any questions or comments different, if you were here and they're different, that's great. We just want to use today to collect preliminary feedback. And obviously you have the comment forms there for you as well, and they will be available online as well. And just wanted to take this opportunity to really get that preliminary feedback from you with the beginning of this project. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon. I think she might be tied up in the moment. So I will turn it over to Jeff Graham.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. The original format we hoped for was come in, drop in. We could talk about our displays for a while, and then do the presentation. But we switched that up at 6 when we had quite a big overflow crowd come in. Sat down right away, and there really wasn't a chance to do that. So we did the presentation at 6, and we're going to do it again now. They more or less the same things as I said in the first one, and there'll be a chance at the end of that presentation for questions. Don't know if you had this feel coming in, but there's a sign-in sheet outside. We hope everybody signs in. There's comment sheets out there for people to fill out, and we talked a lot about that in our first presentation, how those comment sheets are important. There's takeaway information packages out there. There's one that has those 3 boards back here. You can go home and look at that information at your leisure. And there's also what we call a problem opportunity statement out there as well. Have a look at it. And I think that's the that's my warm up anyways. This is a preliminary meeting. We are going to have another meeting in approximately 2 months. This is to get initial feedback, and it's also a chance where I get to chat to you folks a little bit about the rather dry side of what a Class EA process is. So that's what I'm going to focus on for a few minutes. I'm going to run over what process we're doing, and then we'll open the floor to questions. So Jeff Graham from GSS Engineering, and I'm here with Elizabeth Thompson, who's our financial analyst back at GSS. Then we're here to make our presentation. We thank you for coming tonight, obviously. And again, this meeting is really not to present detailed information; it's to present historic information, which most of you folks likely know. And there's a little bit of discussion of that on those boards over there. So what is a class environmental assessment? A class environmental assessment is actually documented in this big fat book, and it's a planning process municipalities undertake to gain input from the public and review agencies and First Nations on major municipal investments and decisions. And so the Howson Dam is a municipally owned piece of infrastructure, and an EA, in our opinion, is an appropriate way to look at options and alternatives for the long-term future of that structure. And the Class EA is mandatory for most major infrastructure projects, new sewage plants, new water plants, and it is a decision-making process that invites public input and basically allows a story to be told on how a decision is made on a major infrastructure investment or decision. We look at a number of, we try and identify alternatives. We've done 5 of those at this point. We'll talk a bit more about those. But for each alternative, we try to evaluate the impact of the natural environment or the impacts on the natural environment for each alternative, also the economic impacts, social impacts and cultural impacts, and also technical impacts. We chatted a bit in our first meeting. That can be a fairly subjective process in how we evaluate things like social impacts, good and bad, for each alternative that we're considering. And we're going to try our best to do that in an objective and fair way over the next 2 months. At the next public meeting, we're going to present our evaluation of those alternatives based on those factors. There was a request in the first meeting that we actually show how we're going to do that before you get, it shows up at your next public meeting, and we're going to take that under consideration. There are 3 main schedules of EAs for municipal projects, from basically minor projects where you don't have to do an EA to major projects, say a brand new sewage plant in town. So a minor project's considered a Schedule A mid-sized or mid-impact project is a Schedule B, and a major project is a Schedule C. So at this point, we're assuming this EA will be a Schedule B. What does that mean? It means that there's at least one public meeting. We're planning on having at least 2. At the end of the process, we produce what they call a project file report, and that documents the information that was presented, the feedback we've received from the public, review agencies, and perhaps members of First Nation communities. It also shows how each alternative was evaluated, and how the preferred alternative was identified. And that document then goes on a 30-day formal comment period for people to comment again on the process. So our notice of study commencement has been published, and I just want to read out the 5 alternatives that we have at this point. Suggestions on revisions or new alternatives, but I'll read out the 5 we have at this point. Rebuild dam and bridge structure and restore dam head pond to former level. And to clarify, we mean a brand new dam and bridge, or maybe without the bridge. That was discussed a lot at the first meeting as well. But we're talking a major project with a brand new dam. Second alternative is rehabilitate the existing dam and bridge. Now again, should the bridge be in the mix? That was discussed quite a bit at the first meeting as well. But with alternative 2, we maintain the water levels where they are now. I'm going to call it the lower level. Alternative 3 is the same, rehabilitate the dam and or the bridge, not or the bridge, but whether the bridge is part of the package or not remains to be seen. Restore the water levels, what I'm going to call the historic levels, 4 or 5 now. Alternative 4 is to remove the dam, restore the river to natural conditions. Alternative 5, do nothing, leave the structure as it is. And I chatted a bit about that in the first meeting, that there's no legislation that we're aware of that prevents municipality from just letting something derelict to get worse and worse and worse over time. There's always an alternative that's required in our EA document, is the do nothing alternative. So I'm already at the summary. This is our first public information center or meeting. We're planning on having another probably in 2 months. We'll let you know the date and the time and the place as far in advance as we can. I'm going to conclude my presentation now. Again, we're going to hang around here for a while. We can talk about the boards, and there's some more information out in the hall. Sheet, if you haven't done so, make sure you take a comment sheet home if you're interested in providing comments. And we hope those might be returned in the next 2 weeks or so. And I'm open for questions. Sir.
I live approximately 400 meters from the dam.
Right.
That's my perspective from
right.
it. Where did those alternatives come from?
Basically, a mutual discussion between myself and Jeff Mullenhouse. Remember, the do nothing is sort of a standard alternative to be considered. But what it's supposed to be is a list of what would be considered reasonable alternatives. But it's a preliminary list. It can be modified and expanded.
One more comment. I don't like any of them.
Okay.
Say that is that there's not one of those alternatives that deals with the dam only.
You're right.
And
we had a long discussion about that too. Again, Jeff Mullenhouse, we discussed that at some length. We're not sure at this point whether you can really separate the discussion of the dam alone from the bridge. They're kind of joined at the hip, you could say. There appear to be at least one massive concrete structure. We're not sure what happens if, can you let the dam deteriorate and fall, or the bridge deteriorate and fall apart and somehow deal with the dam responsibly. But good point. That point was made abundantly clear of concern over including the bridge in the alternatives, and I think we're going to have to tease those out into sub-alternatives over the next 2 months.
Thank you.
Okay.
It wasn't mentioned in the first meeting. When is the timeline these comments have to be back to the council and to you so that everybody gets their comments to you guys in proper enough time before?
We're requesting 2 weeks. But if something comes in 3 weeks from now, we're not throwing it in the garbage. In our EA book, there's no firm time frame to have those comments in following a public meeting. Our job a little easier that we get them as soon as possible.
And then the second public meeting, what will it entail? Is that your final thoughts of this whole process, or will there be a third meeting after that?
At this point, there's no third meeting planned. So the next meeting is you present your evaluation of the alternatives, And even in this book, it's a little bit unclear. You can decide to indicate your preliminary preferred alternative, or you can say, here's their evaluation of them. We're looking for feedback. My experience, it's probably helpful to the community to at least do a preliminary preferred alternative, the preliminary preferred alternative at that time. So I suspect that's what you'll see.
And then after that process, so like after you have that meeting, then how does that process work after that meeting?
Okay, then we ask for comment sheets again. And we go back and consider them. And then we are tasked with writing our project file report, which really needs to identify the preferred alternative. And I suspect we'd be asked to present that to council. Some sort of, you should probably get a motion by council accepting that preliminary preferred alternative. So at that point, it goes from being a preliminary alternative to preferred alternative. And then that whole report goes out for the really official 30-day comment period, where it is legislated in here. If you want to make comment on that final report, you've got 30 days from when the notice is published for that report.
Jeff, on that point, if somebody submits a comment during that formal 30-day period, or if 150 people do, what happens to those?
Well, it's kind of a tough thing. You know, if it may come back, you have to rejig your project file report, potentially. I would think that it would almost be a council decision at that point, how they want to deal with comments received.
Those comments go to whom?
When we issue the notice of completion, right, you might recall this 3 days in the EA, that's what, is we have to include very specific language in that notice of completion that there's 30 days the clock is ticking. And you do have the right to miss the environmental order now, which is related to asking the minister to rescind the EA that's been done, and the proponent should start a whole new full environmental assessment, not the class environmental assessment.
That's the only alternative.
That's the alternative. As far as I know, that's it. Now, just on that, council might, accept that report. The EA is good for 10 years. Because often if you decide, well, we want to build a new sewage plant, but we don't have the money yet, maybe a grant will be available 2 years down the road. So it's a pretty long time frame for that decision to be in place. But there's also amendment opportunities. Things can change 3 years, 5 years out after that. And there's an amendment process discussed in this procedure, how you can change your mind within limits.
Is it legal for council to decide to repair or do whatever with the bridge without one of these great expensive assessments and whatever? Is that legal that they could decide to do that without all this, or no?
Good question. In the first meeting, we talked about the language in the EA where it says if you want to repair your dam and for the exact same function it's providing now, it's a Schedule A. There's no EA required. Schedule B, though, is if you want to remove it or do repairs that sort of changes capacity or like major revisions to the dam, you're into a Schedule B. But if you want to carry on what you have now and rebuild a new one, it's a Schedule C. So the decision was made, let's do it as assuming a Schedule B activity, which is sort of in the middle of the two extremes. So that's what's happening. Go ahead.
One of the options was to demolish the dam. I would like to know what that riverbed, what is it going to look like? Give me a description. If they decide to do that, and which seems to be the history of your organization, what will the riverbed look like in that river where it is now, as opposed to being water that we can use as recreation? What uses or opportunities are we going to have with the land that's going to be left after that?
I think what the river would look like, you go and look at other sections of the North Maitland River in your area of town, around town, upstream or downstream. That's probably the best sense of what it would look like.
That's what we're afraid of.
Okay, but I think that's the best answer I can give you.
Okay, thank you.
In regard to your consideration of alternative 4,
Are they gonna take into account the capital costs involved in basically changing that into parkland, because there's no way they're gonna take something out of the center of town and not fix it?
Well,
And
that's,
then later,
yes,
maintaining, possibly doubling or tripling our parks budget to maintain it, if it's all of a sudden lawns and trees.
that's a good point.
That should be in that consideration.
That's a good point. And that would be something that would be, I would suggest you might consider as a comment.
Well, the lower dam, as the locals call it.
Yeah.
Went out
Early 70s.
40 years ago. At that point, they were going to, regenerate that whole area, and we came and looked at pictures of little nice little bridges and gardens and so on. Well, anybody that's been by there in the last 30 years has seen nothing but scrub brush and it's just an eyesore. They never followed through with that at that time. And if I take a picture of that and superimpose it up in this end, pretty bad. You wouldn't want to look at it. Pathetic.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier some of the impacts, an economical impact, social impact.
Yes.
There were a couple of other ones.
Cultural or heritage is kind of a new one, because it used to be natural, social, and economic. And technical, because we're engineers, we can't
have a historical review.
I would like to hunt out and find out what historical review, if you're thinking like from even an architectural perspective on the dam, is that what you're thinking?
No, I'm thinking more of the overall use of the facility,
yes.
Whether it's a dam or whether it's the pond, it's that overall area.
Yes.
Would you be looking at that as something, or just strictly looking at the dam per se as?
No, we'll look at it as the whole package. And we said at the earlier meeting, if there's data on public usage of the dam and pond as it is now, and the dam and pond as it was previously, we'd love to see that data.
Will an accurate costing be done in the next few months or several months of each of these 5 alternatives?
That's right. That's what we're going to do our best job to come up with accurate estimates of the cost.
And also, will a similar thing be done to consider the possibility of generating small-scale hydro?
Yeah, we talked about that in the first meeting too, and we said it was a bit of a tough one for us because we've chatted about it. I think we're gonna have to likely introduce some alternative that considers hydro, but I think there's been one maybe proposal or presentation made to council in the past from one potential hydro generator. The math is complicated in terms of rate of return and all that stuff, cost of doing it versus long-term revenue stream. It's tricky to know if you can do it without rebuilding the dam. I think the person or the company that came before said, we can do it if the dam is fixed up. But we don't have that data yet. So you can sort of see maybe a range of options that flow out of the energy part. That one's going to be tricky. If a very legitimate purchaser came along and said, we want to buy it from the municipality so we can generate power, I'm not sure how they would look at that. But I don't think at this point, the alternative where we put it up to sale and see if we can get a buyer to take it over is on the table. Perhaps it should be, perhaps it could be. I don't know what the legalities of the municipality is selling, something they own to a third party that says, here's what I'm going to do. It could be tricky.
I don't think that was the intent of the third party.
No, I don't think so either. But theoretically, if it was truly valuable and somebody really could make a run at it financially, they might come forward and say, well, we'll take it from you and we'll do it.
Okay, it's not Niagara Falls, but still low flow energy that they were talking about, it would be enough to make a substantial amount of money for the community.
We haven't looked at the numbers in any detail.
Okay, so but you
Yeah.
will,
We're gonna do our best at that. It's a very complex analysis, I think. They really come up with a fair shape, but we're gonna do our best. Right now, I think the municipality has one proposal from one generator. I don't know what assumptions it's based on. We haven't looked at it carefully, but it's a pretty complex analysis. My understanding is whoever did that proposal also assumed that the municipality would fix the dam first.
yes.
I'm not sure what that really means, fix the dam. Because I would think that you need special intakes, sluices, and concrete work to install a generator. Could be a pretty major fix, but maybe we'll have to see if we can engage some discussion with that particular proponent.
Curiosity. There's several that were concerned about the natural environment. With this dam having been there over 100 and some years, I'm not exactly sure the exact date, people in the room would know. But I was wondering, how long does it take that it would change, that this would now be the natural environment of the creatures, etc., plant life, that are in that river? Would that now not be the natural environment of that area? I mean, not the 100-year historical natural environment, but now the natural environment of that area would be, if we did destroy that, are we not now destroying the natural environment of that area?
We've got a specialist biology team that are going to look at,
I know they've been out there.
Yeah, they've been out there. And I think they're going to have to wrestle with that a bit, honestly. We'll see how they make out. I don't know really what the right answer is on that. Who knows? I don't, because that's a value assessment too, I would suggest. Is 100 years long enough to now be considered the natural environment? I don't know the answer to that question.
You're going to destroy something if you destroy it.
It's 154 years.
That would almost make it a natural environment, I'm thinking almost. Because if we had to destroy and take everything in this town back 154 years, I'm sorry, a few of us are ruthless.
Okay.
But there's buildings in this town you can't touch because they're historic buildings.
That's where they made the mistake of not putting a beaver on that dam.
Yeah. Where do they draw the line? Like,
There is one on that building up there.
That's right. That's right, Rick. No, that's right.
Where did they come up with the historic water level? Where did that originate from? And if they do decide to raise this water, who is gonna put it in, take it out, maintain it, so part of the town's not flooded, or who's gonna look after it?
Well, that's, to me, that's going to be part of this evaluation because it really speaks to the cost of ownership.
But who has to say? Maitland Valley claim they don't have to say.
No, it's.
The town don't have to say.
It's well, right now the boards are put in the fall, or sorry, in the spring and taken out in the fall by town staff.
On whose authority?
Well, I think it's what they've always done for years now.
But it's been jellied around from one to the other. One said yes, one said no. It's their responsibility, now it's somebody else's responsibility.
Okay.
Like,
yeah, well, that's news to me if that's the case.
Oh, okay.
If it's a flop.
Yeah.
My understanding right now is the municipality owns the dam, so they're the ones that would be responsible for putting boards in.
They put them in,
Yeah.
But on whose authority? You don't seem to be down, I don't know.
Yeah.
And where did this water level come from? Where does this go back to? When the water wheel was there, or what?
Well, the committee has made representations that historically the water was 4 or 5 feet higher than it is now. And that's about all I've got to go on. In the Burns-Ross reports, there is some geodetic elevations of a guess where that level was. And from a layman's point of view, you can walk down where the boat launch is and see it's high and dry and consider probably it had to be up 4 or 5 feet to be kind of at the usable midpoint or 2/3 up the slope on that thing.
Well, that brings to the next problem. There's a drain in the mid part of where they want to raise the water to.
Right.
When that water is to the, what they refer to as historic levels.
Yes.
That cannot drain.
Okay.
So.
Are we talking about like an agricultural drain or?
Commercial drain.
Okay,
Takes in,
so a surface drain?
Takes in, it's an open ditch.
Yeah, okay.
Takes in 1,000 acres, commercial property, residential property.
Okay.
Drainage Act says you can't block it off. Simple as that.
Okay.
As long as water is flowing, it's not a problem. That's when it's backed up. There never seems to be any answer on who controls the level. That's to me what kind of has to be determined.
Well,
It's nice to see high water, but who's going to make sure it's not out of control when it rains heavy?
To that point, Mr. Moffett, the dam was there long before the drain was. So it never had.
Oh, I doubt it, Andy.
150
Kind of a natural.
154 years
Drains run natural.
since it's been a municipal drain?
I didn't
You
know
say
that.
you can't block a municipal drain.
You can't. You ran that down.
The pond was there before the drain.
Okay.
So the
Water gets to the river somehow.
I'm not gonna argue with you, I'm
No.
just telling you. The pond was there long before the drain was thought of.
Well, there's thousands of acres that are tiled that don't have an outlet. You told us over and over, we spent $250,000 on a drain that you pushed through. Well, you can shake your head if you like, I don't care, but that's the way it was. Everybody's gotta have an outlet. That's the way the Drainage Act reads. I have no problem with higher water. That's no problem. Let it flow, but don't back it up to the point that it can't drain. And then you get 5-inch rainfall like we had here in mid-August, so who's gonna deal with it? And it's gonna be dealt with quickly, like water gets to the river now within 24 hours, not 4 days like it used to. I got no problem with high water. You can have your water up, makes the town look better. Sure, I agree with that 100%. But it's gotta work for everything. That's the whole thing. There's just a few questions to me that gotta be answered. Who's gonna maintain this?
Well, it's, you know, the maintenance of these boards, it's pretty rudimentary. It's all based on people going down their equipment and doing it manually. And,
But that's what we pay our staff for.
I know.
For 2 feet of water, it's not much to do.
No.
I've never seen your field covered with water, it's not, it's always green.
No, it's the drain.
I've never seen that ditch full of water.
Oh,
Never.
it has
40
been
years.
It has been wrong.
No way.
You know, we had that rain that happened, I'm not sure how many years. The one out by rental pools where it curves around, it was over the highway. It was up on the highway one evening.
Was still running there through the river.
No, it was, the total thing was flooded. Yeah, it got away. Yes, I'm not denying that whatsoever. I'm not against you raising your pond. I just said there's gotta be an outlet for drains. That's all. I'm not here to tell you, go fix your dam. Go ahead. I don't care.
What's an acceptable amount of time for this drain to get down to a level that it wouldn't affect crops or whatever? 1 day?
As long as water is flowing, Bob, that's all that matters. You can have a tile covered with water, as long as the water's moving. But when it goes to that high level, you can go and look in that ditch and the water is laying there, like it can't move. Water's the best level you got.
Was there a problem with water sitting in that drain? Why, what's to do?
Backs up the tiles. When tiles have water sitting in them for an extended period of time, well.
But what's an extended period?
6 months.
What would sit that long with it?
Sure. Well, you put them in May, April. You take them out in October, November, well, you do the math. Like, I think there's a solution in between having water to the point that they don't use motorboats on the river anyway.
We used to.
Yes.
All the time.
And one party kind of ruined that for everybody, when they put too big a boat in there. There's no problem with small boats, they can run on a sensible amount of water, that's not a problem.
Ski in there
Yeah.
all the time,
Yeah.
and we used to water ski all the way around the island.
Yep. It's just gotta be maintained, that's all. Like, look after it. When the water gets high, if you have to drop it, I don't know how wide your boards are, 12 inches. If it has to be dropped, we'll drop it, then not leave it, and we'll worry about it in October, November, we'll take them out. We haven't had to deal with high water for 15 years because it's just been dry. That's the whole thing, but it's gonna change someday. I'll shut up.
That's part of what a dam is for, right? Controls the water level. So if you need, then you said you need it down,
Pardon?
it's down, right?
What's that?
That's what a dam is all meant for, is to control the water level.
Yeah.
So, you don't want it that there's no water there.
No, I have no problem bringing it up to what's a sensible level.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
fine. I have no problem whatsoever.
But if it gets too high, that the drains aren't working, then take a board.
Let it drop a little bit.
Yeah.
But nobody seems to
Monitor.
want to look after it that part. Yeah.
Well, the town, what I understand, owns the dam and the ground under and around the river down there. So my way of thinking, they should be the ones that control it, probably accepting advice from Conservation Authority or Weatherman or somebody, but it's inevitably, I think, the town's responsibility to maneuver the logs or whatever they have in there.
Does the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority have a fair amount of quote in the decision-making involved here, influence? And if so, in what ways and when?
Well, they're a review agency on our contract list, so it'll be up to them if they want to respond and provide comment.
But legally, do they have any legally designated
I'm
authority?
not sure they do, because I think if you want to make repairs of significant nature to that dam, you need an M&R LIRA permit. Though I think you would also need a permit from them as well. So I guess it's possible that M&R might say, okay, Conservation Authority might say, well, we don't want to issue a permit.
Has there been any indication that that could or would happen?
Not yet.
Well, I thought you said it was the town's facility.
Yeah.
So, and you own the property in front of it and behind it.
Yes.
So how would the Conservation Authority have jurisdiction over that?
Well, they have jurisdiction over a lot of stuff,
Yes.
including on private property, right?
But this is the town's property.
Yeah, but Mike, we've got correspondence from the M&R that says likely you would have to submit an application under the Lakes and Rivers Improvement Act for a work permit from them for even minor repairs. And I suspect you have to inquire with the Conservation Authority to see if a permit application of them would also be necessary.
I thought we'd only have to submit an application if we were working in the waterway. And to repair the dam, we would not have to work in the waterway.
No, there's correspondence on record, the municipality has, it says, even if you do it in the dry with the water down, they still want a permit application.
So my understanding this property that regardless of what we decide, they ultimately get to say as to whether or not they're going to allow us to do this or not, or am I misunderstanding?
That's a possibility.
So what's the point?
Well, the point is, we still have to satisfy, from a decision-making point of view, this.
But if we go through all that,
Yep, if you go
and we
through,
say, okay, we want to reduce the dam, well, then they can just turn around and say, no.
that's a possibility.
Well, I think it's a fairly common fact that the Conservation Authority aren't in favor of dams. Am I right?
I don't know, you'd have to ask them.
Okay, well,
And
I
that might
think people that have asked them,
Yes.
they say, we want everything to be natural, so if 500 years ago, there was just a little trickle going down through here, that's what we want again.
Mhm.
Yeah. So like our other speaker said, are we just spinning our wheels here? Because we pretty well know, or I think we have a pretty good idea of what the Maitland Valley has gonna say, they're gonna say, no, we don't want any structures on any of our rivers. So we're not giving you can't get a permit, so you just spend a couple $100,000, get another opinion, and for what? If we know up front, then why don't we all go home and watch the hockey game or something? Wasting our time down here. Any comments?
Well, my first comment is, I mean, I don't think there's anything to stop the municipality from inquiring to Maitland Valley.
Well, why don't we?
Well,
Do that first then, before we
Yeah,
give
before we-
$1,000 to you.
And then a draft of the different options you have and see what's more liable.
Well, yeah, tearing down the dam is what the only option they have.
Not necessarily, you might want to preserve that land behind it as a marsh or a wildlife that's in the waterway.
Well, you might get away with that with them, but I think they don't want anything more than what would run down there normal, naturally.
Jeff, is that something that municipality would consider as appropriate, is to make an inquiry on?
Yeah, I think we could reach out for initial conversation with Maitland Valley.
Why have we not done that? Why have we
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Sharon has made that inquiry. The first permit is required from the Ministry of Natural Resources under the Lakes and Rivers Improvement Act.
Okay.
We know we need one of those to repair the dam. They've said you need it. And maybe you'll need to study a couple of things. But the point is, instead of going ahead and making that application and doing the absolute necessary studies to get the permit, council decided to go this route and look at all the alternatives so that they could make an informed decision. If our information that the Citizens Committee has gathered is if the town got the permit from the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Conservation Authority permit would pretty much be a rubber stamp.
So why are we doing all this?
So the Ministry of Natural Resources.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Sharon.
That's what they're.
I don't believe that I have any correspondence that states that, but I mean, we can search.
No, we don't have any correspondence.
The conversation that we did have with Ministry of Natural Resources was that they would not consider issuing a permit for a dam repair project without first doing a stability analysis and a dam break analysis. BM Ross estimated the cost of those two studies to be about $60,000 to $80,000. So we could have moved forward and done those two studies. And if the answer came back that, no, the dam is not stable and it can't be repaired, that was money that was council felt was thrown away. So the other option is, and then you'd have to look at, okay, it can't be repaired, what do we do? Do we have to decommission it? What's our next option? So council looked at the other route, which was to go the environmental assessment route, to look at all of the different alternatives and figure out what the preferred option was, going through this consultation with the community, looking at all of the costs of potential options, making their decision, and then moving forward with that preferred decision. So there's risk on either side. We could have done a stability analysis first, spent a whole lot of money, and have the answer come back that it's not stable. And then we have to turn around and do an EA process, spend the money on Mr. Graham, and move forward with another alternative, investigate our other alternatives. So they were left
Put the
with
cart in
this.
front of the horse then.
Yeah. So they opted to move forward with the EA process to determine what was the preferred alternative, to do the consultation with all of the approvals agencies through this formal process to help in their decision making.
So within your EA assessment, is this stability test and break test, what she just talked about, is that included in your study?
No, it's not.
So your study comes back with the preferred recommendations.
So we still have to do that?
So will council then have to redo the stability test and the other tests going forward? If
I
the
think,
preferred,
I think what's gonna happen over the next month or two, we're gonna have a lot of discussion about the chicken and egg question, which is how do we evaluate the alternatives if we don't have the stability analysis done?
I was just
Yeah,
curious on
yeah.
that.
So but at this point, our price package does not include an $80,000 stability analysis.
Would you not have recommended that, taking on a contract?
No. Because we responded to the terms of reference issued by the municipality. If they had asked for that to be included, we would have priced it.
Like in good business, would you not have thought of that? That this is maybe what you should have done?
It would have doubled our price and put us up.
anyways.
Would you not have
But you gotta
recommended
do
it
that
though?
anyway.
It's tough in our business. If you go over the top with recommending everything you think your customer should do. I mean, our competitors wouldn't do that,
How do you know?
just based on 25 years of experience.
I've worked with 35 years of experience in business and we would have.
Okay, well,
It was just something I wanted to ask.
Yeah,
because
that's a good question.
That's the first time that's ever been brought up.
Yeah.
It needs to be.
Yeah, so I would encourage, there are reports available on our website that council considered when they made these decisions, so I would encourage everybody to go on and look. A lot of those facts that are in the report came from BM Ross, the former consultant that was looking at this. So they did provide council with some ballpark costs as to what some options would be, not all of the options that are being considered in the EA process. And part of what council was looking at in their long-term decision-making is, we have an option to repair the dam, and the committee had gone forward and done some investigation on that. The original motion that was passed by council said that they were going to release $15,000 from the reserve to investigate the feasibility of repairing the dam. And so the preliminary report that came back, and it was stated to council at that time that the repair could be done within the $200,000 reserve that was there. The preliminary report that came in from BMROS showed that the cost would be about $458,000, that there would be repair contracts in the neighborhood of maybe $50,000 every 15 years or so to maintain it, and it may extend the useful life of the dam for 35 to possibly 50 years. And then at that point, council's going to have to decide what they need to do with that structure again. So you're not only looking at how do we figure out how we're going to pay for the funds which now, or pay for the repairs which now far exceed the available reserve, but we also have to start thinking about how we're going to put money away over the next 35 years to deal with that structure when it reaches the end of its useful life. So when you're weighing the alternatives, you don't necessarily look at what the costs are right now, but you look at the long-term costs of each of the options. That initial analysis that came back from BM Ross did not include any of the approvals because BM Ross was instructed by the committee not to to leave that part out of it. So at that point, they moved forward and did a preliminary design, but they did not consider the approvals that were required and the studies that would be required. So those costs had to be added on to the rehabilitation costs again, which made it even more expensive. So at this point, that's when council kind of said we need to stop and look at all of the alternatives to see where we need to go long-term structure. The simple fact of the matter is, and this was raised earlier in the evening, talking about what's council's plan long-term for not only this asset, but many of our other assets. And the fact of the matter is we need to do better on our planning, and that's something that council has recognized. So they want to consider their infrastructure spending, not only on this project, but what are the other major items that we need to spend our infrastructure dollars on over the next few years. And the simple fact of the matter is, we don't have a lot of reserve kicking around for any of them. So it was kind of a sober moment when we looked at some of these costs. It's a reality check. And I recognize that, you know, some people are looking at me like the big bad wolf because I did tell council, we need to stop. We need to consider where the money is coming from for whatever option you choose. I have never said don't repair the dam. I have never said decommission. What I'm saying is whatever option you choose, know where the money is coming from and let's have a plan. So informed decision making.
That's how we end money for that dam.
We
Where
had,
did it all go?
as far as I know, there was a $200,000 reserve.
I thought it was close to 500.
When I came, there was a $200,000 reserve when I arrived, so that
Sharon,
doesn't go far.
you were just kind of crystal balling what's gonna happen in 40 years. We kind of put in, well, if we had a hydro generating plant, then look at all the money that we're going to be able to put towards repairing and maintaining, which the company had said that they would do.
Right, and so part of that would be, we have to know whether the dam is stable. So that stability analysis has to be done. So there are so many different alternatives to look at, and it's not a simple solution. Each alternative has to look at what approvals are required, what is the stability of that structure. Back to the bridge, you know, BM Ross saying they were instructed not to consider the bridge as part of the original study. But when I questioned them on it and said, okay, we aren't considering the bridge in the design and the work that you did, should we be? And they said, yes, we should be. They should be considered together because if you have to remove the bridge, it does affect the stability of that structure. And then, you know, you don't want to spend money on rehabilitation and all of a sudden you have to take off the bridge structure and you've weakened it. So it's a complex issue. It's not as simple as you might think. And that's why there are a significant number of studies that want to be done. And M&R was very adamant that they want to see this stability analysis before they would consider issuing a permit for a repair project.
Sharon, with all this assessment and all this investigation that you have done, have you investigated what if they come up with the idea we have to demolish this dam, how much would that cost? Being as you've done all the investigation of the other angles and whatever, what would it cost?
So BM Ross provided, and it's very, very ballpark, but I asked them if they would give council an idea of what the various options would cost. They said about $1.1 million for a decommissioning project.
And that's not counting the maintaining of the park that would theoretically be put in there.
Exactly.
And we saw how the park looked on the other side of the bridge, but that's okay. But nevertheless, I'm not so sure that repairing and maintaining, et cetera, the bridge is going to come up anywhere near this deal of demolishing. I'm just kind of wondering.
Well, yeah, and
it's going to cost us more to demolish it. Say it. It's going to cost us more to demolish it and maintain a park than it is to repair it and upkeep it. That's without the generator.
Well, if you repair it and upkeep it now, then you still have to keep putting money away to consider what happens to it when it does reach the end of its.
But that's what you do with good business.
That's what you, yes, exactly.
Absolutely. And that's what I've been trying to say is whatever the solution is, we need to have a plan. We need to know where the money's coming from and we need to be prepared to address it, not only now, but in the future.
But they both have maintenance in the future, so there you go. But also, there's been this talk about kind of insinuating that rebuilding or fixing up the dam is going to cost more than demolishing it. And you just stated now that it's going to cost us less. So why I don't get it. Yes, sir.
So thank you. So to start this process, I was the one to put the recommendation, the motion to put the CA process in place. I'll tell you why I did it. So many decisions are made with one alternative in mind. We all look at our house, we all look at our stuff at home, we look at all the alternatives before making a decision. That is why I put that motion on the table. One, I want to hear this conversation from not only the committee, but from ratepayers in North Huron. This conversation is long overdue in my mind, and maybe it happened before I was a councillor, maybe it hasn't, I don't know. But this is the conversation that I think is important. Not only this conversation, but the conversation that happened at 6.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But these comments are important. But in my mind, I'm not making a motion to repair something when it's only one alternative. Regardless of whether it's a community that wants to do it or not. I respect the committee that wants to do this. I do. But in the eyes of what's the best for the municipality, in my mind, I don't have any other options than just this option. And maybe it will cost more to remove it long term. We don't know that. The 1.1 million, yeah, sure. But the cost over the life of the program, so you pay 1.1 million to remove it, okay? Listen to me, one sec. 1.1 million remove it once, and then you maintain the park. You fix the dam, then you gotta maintain for 35 years.
40 years will be paid.
40 years. If you add hydro, let's ignore the hydro part for a minute.
No.
Ignore it for a minute.
No.
Until you understand that, the cost of money changes. Time value of money. So the conversation is at the same price today, 1.1 million, or whatever the cost is from 50 years from now. Let's look at the time value of money. Maybe it's the same, maybe it is cheaper. As a councillor right now, I don't know that answer. No, we haven't done a cost time value of money. All we know is hard dollars. All we know is the dollar now and $1.50 years from now. It's, when you add them all together, is it the same? I don't know. So the conversation is about alternatives. And that's all it's ever been. I want people to understand that there is more than one alternative. And if at the end of the day, if the structure is the prettier alternative and this group wants to do it, understand, I'm accepting to that. But what I'm also telling ratepayers also is who's paying for it. North Huron ratepayers are paying for it. So any support from outside the municipality is great to have, but they're not paying for it. They're not. North Huron ratepayers are paying for it. So that's why I want this comment period. I want both the good and the bad. I want people to say what they don't like about the project, and I want them to say what they do like about the project. That's fair. And I think it's fair to have this conversation and let the community have their say. Not just a committee and not just whatever. Let's have the whole ratepayers have a say and decide what's best for that money. That's the intention of that motion. Right or wrong, I will take some responsibility for that. But I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't believe that this is the right approach. You have your opinions, whether it is or it isn't. But at the end of the day, as a councillor, it's a lot of money. And I want to make sure that the process is open. People have the right to say what they want to say. But at the end of the day, we're making the best decision with all the information in front of us. Not just one alternative, but all. That's the point. So there's lots of work that go ahead. There's lots of work. There's lots of discussions that are still going to happen. The result's not going to happen tomorrow. Let's have the conversation and understand, let them do their job based on what we have and go through what we have to make the decision on. That's the real decision we're trying to get to. What's the real reason why we're here? To save the pond, save the dam? Maybe. But what is the real economic benefit and what is the best thing for North Huron. That's where I'm coming from.
People that were here before you came to the meeting had suggested if need be, there would be giant fundraising of whatever means to be able to do this. That's how desperate they were to keep the dam. The other thing is, in my opinion, of past experience, council represented the desires of the town. When a third of the town signed a document to say they wanted to save the dam, that's pretty clear to me, a suggestion to council, being as they represent the desires of the town.
So what I will tell you in that, I'll make this comment to you because I was one of the ones that signed that documentation at homecoming. Signed that document. It was for information only. That's what I signed. It wasn't support the dam, wasn't support for building the dam. It was, do you want to see information regarding the dam and the save the thing? That's what I signed. I wouldn't have never signed, let's save the dam, not knowing what information or what it's going to cost. That doesn't make any sense. In my mind, I'm a businessman. There's lots of things that we do. But at the end of the day, if it's information I'm looking for, sure, I want people to tell me information. It's great. But at the end of the day, it's all about money. Let's be clear. It's about money.
So Trevor, just a quick question. I understand what you're saying about wanting all those costings. I think that makes total sense. Except there was a costing on replacing the dam from BM Ross. Pretty clear number, and I'm sure that hasn't gone down. So why is that even being included? It's got to be cost prohibitive. I don't know, what was it, between $3 and $4 or $5 million, which is not doable. And I don't think anybody in this room could think that would be doable. So why include it? I mean, so you got options. Is there an option to repair it? Is there an option to convert it into a weir type dam? You know, why not investigate those? Why waste time on things that municipality we know can afford?
So the conversation, I don't know some of those answers, Archie. I really don't.
Well, no, I'm asking.
But what I'm saying is,
the council decided to include that.
But what I'm saying, we've included these alternatives as part of the thing. That's been a discussion from Jeff and them about what the alternative is. We didn't see the alternatives. I haven't seen the alternatives. But you've seen this report now, not without a meeting.
You didn't have input into what alternatives were?
So we had input based on what the alternatives we think they should be, but we didn't know if they were separating the dam structure or whatever. The conversation for mine is I've had some discussions with people about if you take the dam out, you decommission the dam, is there potential grants that are available to take it out? Potentially. But I've been told there isn't any grants available to fix it. So understanding that conversation, there's a lot more information that we don't know about taking it out, putting it in, repairing it. I don't know those things.
But there was an initial cost that Ross didn't estimate on what it would cost to replace it. And that doesn't make any sense. And I don't think anybody in the room can think that that's financially viable. So why even include it in the options? I don't understand.
Well, we supported inclusion because we're supposed to evaluate all reasonable alternatives. And you can argue, well, that's not a reasonable alternative, but if we didn't have it in, somebody would say, why isn't it in?
Well, I mean,
Trudeau's handed out government millions by
historic numbers and see that it wasn't feasible probably 10, 15 years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah. I don't suspect it's going to last long in the analysis, to spend, and I don't know if their report has any rationale for how they came up with 3 million or whatever. It might have just been a number like this, right? Good estimate. I mean, if you really crack down the number and break it down, you might find it's more like 15 million.
I would believe it.
And maybe it's 20 if it's also a new bridge as part of the dam, So we're going to try and look at all that. But I would say that Jeff and we've worked at, I'm just trying to recall if the original terms reference had new dam as before, but really this exercise, including right now, we're reaching out for people to suggest, are there other alternatives that are reasonable that we need to look at?
So we're gonna add, looking at a dam to it?
Well, we've already got a brand new dam.
A dam.
Yeah.
Not a bridge and dam, a dam.
Yes, I think that's probably likely going to happen. We're going to try and.
And there's several versions of a dam. We're going to look at all.
Yeah. Do our best to look at reasonable alternatives.
I think just to kind of speak to that point, and really the intent of tonight, we wanted to have this conversation so that at least we can generate some more in-depth alternatives. Certainly they went out in the terms of reference as sort of high level, and that's just the starting point for us. And we want to have these conversations with you so that we can hear from you, public, And again, reiterating the comment sheet, that's really what we're trying to do right now is just take in information so that we can come back to a second meeting with more options and with a good detailed analysis so that you can comment again and you can provide more feedback to us and then ultimately to speak to the councilor's comments to give good information to council so they can make an informed decision. And that's not only technical information and certainly we should find in the report, but that's also the information we get from you as far as how you're feeling as the public.
Yeah, the way they're making Valley seems to be a thorn in the side. And the way they're cutting back, Premier Wind on everything. Do we know if she's gonna come along and say we don't need Maitland Valley? Would that be an advantage for us?
I don't think that's gonna happen.
What do you think?
You can cut your money off, can't you?
So is it fair to say that this is a financial decision only?
No, I wouldn't suggest that, no.
Okay. No, just the way you were going with that, Trevor. I just want to know that, I want that out there.
You're an awesome fundraiser, Trevor. We could use you.
My plate's pretty full.
Well, this assessment, look at the experience of other towns that have similar sized watersheds that have had dams or still have dams and look at their experience in either repairing them, rebuilding them, or decommissioning and use that to help inform the decision-making around costs and feasibility.
I'm not aware of any kind of repository of knowledge that says here are 10 dam repairs that have been done. That's, somewhat apples to apples. We could think about trying to hunt that down.
Like, would the MNR have that information?
Well, that might be a good point. We could go to them and say, okay, what LIRA permits have you issued for repairs?
Last 5 years or whatever.
Yeah, in Southern Ontario, let's say.
Yeah.
Or would it be better to ask the ones for decommission and see what the towns think of it now?
Yeah, go both ways.
So we could do both. We see if they might, how the government is with privacy rules and all this other stuff. But if their permits issued in municipalities, one would think it should be public.
Yeah.
That's a good suggestion, actually.
To that point, I think one of the unusual things about this particular circumstance is the dam pond is in the middle of town where most of the dams that get taken out, the pond is out of town in the agricultural adjoining area.
Right.
So we're taking, the pond disappearing out in the adjoining area is nothing like removing our body of water in the middle of town. Right. So I think it's hard to compare. It's a bit oranges to apples there.
I think if you looked at Seaforth, Exeter, and Mitchell, all 3 dams are owned by Conservation Authority, and all 3 of them have been repaired in the last 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
And I believe Delhi. So those are municipalities that are close in size. And I believe they're repaired for exactly the same purposes that we're looking for.
Yeah, getting back to this committee, is this a committee that was originally independently formed? Was this a committee that was struck by the council to bring back a report? How did this develop? Did the council take any recommendations from this committee to form your decision? Who was the committee speaking for?
I don't have too much knowledge of that history.
And whoever might know in the room, was it an independent committee?
I might know. Yes, it was an independent, concerned citizens committee. And the deterioration of the dam has just continued over the years. And finally, a number of people have said, hey, enough is enough. We need to do something. We know that there's money set aside. There was $200,000 set aside. And, maybe we should do something with it. And so that's sort of how it got started.
Did you make recommendations to council as a result of your committee's findings, Rennie, or just what came about? Just for my own information.
Well, we did have a wish list that we took, and they were going to consider it. And I believe that it's sort of because of the citizens committee that they decided that, no, they may be better take a more serious look at doing something with the dam rather than just leaving it. Because I don't believe that just leaving it is an option.
Thank you.
I had one question. You guys would have did the stability test on it, and it came back that it was no longer stable. Would we be here tonight?
If it was no longer stable, council would then have to consider what's our next steps. You know, I think everyone agrees with Rennie that the municipality owns the structure and we are responsible for it. So we have to make a decision.
So from my personal, so you'd spend $70,000 on a stability test, right? Now you're spending $80,000 on an EA assessment, which then in turn you may end up having to do another stability test.
Right. Or we could have spent money on a stability test and turned around and had to do an EA.
Either or,
This is what.
I don't think you do the stability test twice.
When you're building a house, do you put the foundation in before you get a permit?
I'm just asking.
I would get to make sure it's ready to go before you do the environmental thing.
But you probably know what kind of house you're building before you make the decision to go ahead, which is exactly what council is deciding.
Oh, that's fine. I just wanted to find out why that decision was made to go that way. The stability. That's all.
I have one more question. I've been listening to a lot of discussion, listening to your responses, listening to council's responses, listening to your response, listening to your response, listening to everybody here, watching frustrations go out, people very upset for various reasons. I know you can't compare apples to oranges, but is this commonplace for what usually happens at the meetings that you have? Because you've been a chairperson of a lot of, is this what happens?
It depends. I've had EA meetings where 5 people show up, and it really comes down to the project. I've had meetings where I've had 300 people in the room, and we discuss whether sewer should go into Solomon Beach or not. I've had projects where we've done major sewage investments where 5 people show up because they've been there for 30 years. They're just part of the fabric of the community.
I guess I meant the tone of things, the tone of the 2 sessions, of what you've heard.
Well, when you have 5 people come out to a public meeting, it's really a roundtable discussion as you stand around your presentations and, honestly try and fill out 2 hours. But this is why the government came up with the Environmental Assessment Act back in the 60s, as far as I know, because they want to make sure that big decisions like this that affect the public take into account public opinion. So I'm not sure how to really answer your question.
I've been to a few too, and I can say I've seen similar meetings, and it's what I expected coming tonight. Standing up here, I knew that people are very passionate about this structure. There are people with differences of opinion on the structure in the community. I've heard different sides. So we are up here not taking this personally. This is part of our job. It's the tough part of our job, but we're here wanting to hear what you have to say tonight. So in my opinion, it's typical from what I've seen on a similar type of project.
Thank you.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
I asked you previously at 6 o'clock if you had any experience with dams and decommissions and environmental assessments, and you told me no.
We've done an EA on the Terra Dam, the Great Solid Conservation Authority.
and that you had nothing to do with any other dam projects.
Yes, I have.
I made a comment about a dam that was decommissioned and tore down, and I think you said you didn't have any recollection of that dam.
What's your question, sir?
I asked you, you told me no.
What was the question?
About the Malmay Dam, how
Yes,
dam?
yes, I was involved with the Malmay Dam.
Okay, I asked that question, you said no.
I don't recall that question being asked.
I think there was people in this room that
Okay.
heard me ask that question.
Well, okay. Yeah, I was involved with that.
Okay, I'm just credibility reasons. I'm asking.
Yeah, maybe you can clarify what part of that process you were involved with, just to make that distinction between this planning process and the process that you were involved with.
That's a good question. In Mildmay, another consultant did the EA, and they looked at different alternatives, and the eventual alternative that was recommended and adopted by council was to remove the dam.
But I asked if you had any involvement in projects such as.
Well, my answer is yes.
Prior, at 6 o'clock, it was no.
I don't recall answering that question to no.
Good answer.
You the tape.
I gotta go, but I would like to thank the council that showed up to listen to us, for coming out and listening to us. I hope you take the people's concerns to heart. I know some of you live in this town and look at that river and the dam every day. I do. I wake up and look at it. I live here. Some of us don't, but I would like to think that we can keep that dam in the waterway there in whatever way we can.
Do you mind if I just make a comment? I'm not gonna stand Trevor said a lot of things, but I think you have to, when you go back to the stability analysis, we just gone ahead and ordered that, and it was determined that the dam should be removed. The first question that probably everybody in this room would have asked is, well, didn't you look at any other alternatives? Okay. So that's why we switched that, and when the motion came up, we said that's what we want to do, is look at it from the aspect of taking into account all of your views now and the alternatives. And they've created a list that we started with at the time when we, I believe we put forward the tender, was 3. That was all we looked at. That was, do nothing, fix it, remove it. But they were the 3 they started with, and they've expanded it dramatically, and I think there's going to be more expansions to it. We want to consider all that. In the end, yes, there will be a monetary consideration. What we're trying to do first is determine what we have to choose from, then look at the costs, and then ask you as the ratepayers what you feel you want to do. Like, how far are you prepared to go? If we come back with a $3 million or $5 million project, let's remember some of the other projects that have occurred here that became 3 million, became 5 million, became 6 million. And that's always an issue. So we want to take due diligence at this time and ask you guys for your opinions and look at all the alternatives we can before we come up with that dreaded stability test. It says you don't have a choice, because maybe there are choices. So
They could veto your choice.
Pardon?
They could easily veto your choice. You could come up with repair the dam, and you can't get the permit for it. So you spend all this money.
Well, this, as far as I'm concerned, the way we're doing it now is actually going to be more cost effective than if we had just gone out and dropped the $80,000 in the stability test. Okay, because then we could have had the position where people would have come after us and tried to change our minds through whatever source or route they could take. And we would have ended up in a great big argument about what could have been done and what we didn't do. So this is the route we chose. We can argue whether it's the right one or the wrong one till the cows come home. But we've made the decision. We're trying to get your input. Everybody in council wants to make sure we make the right decision. Okay. We're not just going to go out and throw money at it, whether it's this route or it's a stability analysis. We thought very carefully about that before we made that decision. And that was a decision that council had to make. So you're right. In the end, we could make a decision, or we're going to get back all the information and have a permit denied. That's something we can't control. We agreed tonight that Jeff and they're going to make the approach to find out if where Maitland Valley stands on this idea, and we'll get that information back. And if they come back and say, you know what, no way, we don't care what you come back with, we're not going to give you a permit, then we have to rethink the issue. And we'll come back to you with that information. Okay, so we're trying to be as open as we can. We don't want 5 years from now to be standing out in the front steps there arguing about how much money we spent to repair a dam or build something else to turn into a white elephant. And this time we've got to look at the cost down the road as well. $1 million to tear something down, put in a park, maybe less expensive than some of the other alternatives. But then we might find out that that's going to be, it could be the other way. Let's look at it. We're willing to look at it and talk about it. We don't want to fight about it. We just want to find out what you feel. We'll find out what we can do with it. Jeff's recommendation. And then we'll go at it. We'll talk about it again. Maybe we will have a third meeting, right? We don't know. Now we've scheduled 2. We're only required 1. You're going to get 2. I might get a third. Okay. Thanks for coming.
So maybe just to conclude then, if you've got comment sheets and you can fill them out, please leave them with us or feel free to bring them back. And then we will come up with information as far as timing for the second meeting, when we will see more information in front of you. Thank you for coming out tonight. It's been a long night, so appreciate your attention.
Hey, Jeff.
You're on council.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, Trevor. Yes, nice to meet you.
I know you're here.